Hello everyone, I'm Freaky and welcome to the video. Before I get into this video, there's something I want you guys to do for me. There's actually a part 1 to this video, and this video that you're watching is a part 2. So please, go and watch that video first, and then as soon as you watch that, come back, watch me talking this video, because the first video gets things started and tells you the basics of what I'm trying to say about the new way of scaling characters. So please, stop this video, go and watch that video first. I'll leave a link in the description box below to that video, and as soon as you've done that, come back and watch this video. And with that said, let's resume with the video. Okay, now, basically, in my last video, I talk about how many different versions of a character there is. Like, there's loads of versions of Goku and there's loads of versions of Iron Man. And what I proposed what we would do is get all versions of Goku and get all versions of Iron Man. In fact, not just those two, but all characters in general, and put them all in order of where each version of the character comes from, going from their absolute weakest to their absolute strongest, from each timeline / story. Like, we know there's loads of versions of Goku, there's loads of versions of Iron Man, there's loads of versions of Superman, etc, etc. And I point out that we need to sort out how many versions of a character there is, and we put those characters from the very beginning of their story to the end of where that timeline or story ends. Something similar to what I've got on the screen right now. It would be kind of something like that, because there are loads of versions of Goku, there's loads of versions of Iron Man, the Hulk, Superman, etc, etc. And that's something I think that we should all do. Get every single version of a character and put them in place of where all versions of this character comes from. Like, for example, there's Dragon Ball Goku going to Dragon Ball GT, Goku going into Dragon Ball Super, Xeno Goku, Capsule Corp Goku, etc, etc. It would be kind of something like that, where you get all versions of one character and put them in a timeline of where that Goku goes in his timeline. And it's the same with other characters, like where every single version of the Hulk comes from, or where every single version of Superman comes from, or where Iron Man comes from. And the reason why I want it like this is because I don't like the fact that Death Battle likes to mesh up some characters of a character, which is why I think this is something that we need to do, is to sort out where each version of a character goes, so that way we don't have to mesh up characters, because there are some things that other versions of a character cannot do or doesn't have. Like, Dragon Ball Super Goku can't go Super Saiyan 4, and GT Goku cannot go Super Saiyan Blue. Or look at all the versions of Iron Man. There are loads of versions of Iron Man or Tony Stark that comes from different series, different animated series, different comics, etc, etc. And the thing is, there are loads of versions of Tony Stark from different stories, different timelines that don't mesh up together. And all those different versions of Tony uses different suits and has made suits that the other versions of him from different timelines and stories hasn't created or used. So let's just say, for example, that you've got MCU Tony Stark from the Disney films, and let's just say, for example, that there was Model 39, also known as the Phoenix Buster armor. This is an armor from the comics that was supposed to be on par with the Phoenix. The thing is, I don't know that much about this sort of armor, but this is an armor that comes from a different timeline or story. Now, let's just say, for example, if Death Battle used MCU Iron Man, and then Death Battle said Tony Stark also as the Phoenix Buster. Tony Stark is going to be using the Phoenix Buster in this fight against so-and-so. But the thing is, MCU Tony Stark doesn't have the Phoenix Buster. The Phoenix Buster is from a different timeline or story. So let me ask you guys something. Would it be fair if MCU Tony Stark was to use the Phoenix Buster from the comics? Yes or no? And obviously you would say no, it wouldn't be fair, because that's basically meshing other characters. These two Tony Starks are completely different characters, and one doesn't know about the other suits, which is why I've always suggested that we need to put every single version of Iron Man in order from different timelines and series next to each other, something like this. And not just Iron Man, but other characters as well, something like this. But that's not all. We also need to figure out which characters from each timeline is the most powerful. So let's just say, for example, that we go back to Goku, just for example, and let's just say, for example, that Xeno Goku is the most powerful version of Goku, and then Z Super Goku is the next most powerful, and then Z GT Goku is the third most powerful. And now listen, I know what some people are going to say, and they're going to say, oh no, Geek Freak, this isn't how powerful Goku is. Dragon Ball Super Goku is much more powerful than Xeno Goku. No, hear me out. This is just an example piece. I'm pretty goddamn sure that Dragon Ball Z Super Goku is much more powerful than Xeno Goku by the time Goku has gotten to the Granola arc. But like I said, this is just an example piece. But again, this is just an example piece. It's not an accurate description of which timeline Goku is the most powerful version of Goku. Like I said, it's just an example. Anyways, like I said, let's just say for example that we sorted out all the versions of Goku, and yes, I know there's more than these versions of Goku, but like I said, this is just an example piece. So let's just say for example that we got all the versions of Goku, sorted them out in order of where they go in a timeline or story. What would be the next thing to do? And that is to put all these versions of Goku in order on how powerful they are in the timelines. Like, which timeline version of Goku is the most powerfulest to the weakest version in that Goku's timeline. It would be kinda sorta something like this. Again, this is just an example piece. It's not accurate and it's not official, it's just an example piece. And as the series goes on, this chart shows us the feats that Goku has done from the beginning of his life, and as the series goes on, it shows us the feats and transformations that Goku has done from his timelines or stories. You know, Xeno Goku, Super Goku, GT Goku, you know, stuff like that. And if we was to figure out which version of Goku is the most powerful from each timeline, and if Xeno Goku is the most powerful version of Goku, not saying he is, but this is just an example. Let's just say for example that Xeno Goku is the most powerful version, and he can beat all versions of Goku from different timelines and stories. So let's just say for example that we was in Z Super Goku timeline, and as the series goes on, and we got to the point of where Z Super Goku goes in his timeline of his feats and his most powerful transformation to the end of his story, which would be the 6th star, that version of Goku can beat all versions of Z GT Goku, and he can beat 5 stars of Xeno Goku, and he maybe can be on par with the 6th star of Xeno Goku. It depends on their feats and transformations really. So these stars represents Goku's feats and transformations at the end of each of the sagas. Like I said, this is just an example piece and a prototype of what I'm trying to do. Like I said, there are loads of versions of Goku, but the thing is, I don't know which version of Goku is the most powerful from his timeline or story, which is why we need somebody to sort this out and say which version of Goku is the most powerful to the end of each of his series or stories. It's the same with Iron Man. There are loads of versions of Iron Man. Different comics, different animated series, different live action movies, etc, etc. Like, which one is the most weakest version of Iron Man to the most powerful version of Iron Man in each of his own timelines or stories. Like I said, this is just an example piece, so I hope you guys know what I'm trying to say, but if you don't, please let me know in the comments down below and I'll try and explain to the best of my abilities. Now, since that's all been taken care of, while I was trying to figure out this new way of power scaling for each version of the character, I also spotted a few problems, because let's just say for example that it was like this, like weakest to strongest from each series or story or timeline. Let's have a look at Gaara from Naruto. Now, in the original Naruto, Gaara had Shikaku inside of him, and in Naruto Shippuden, he had Shikaku removed from him. Now, it is said that if you have a tailed beast in you, you will have more power inside of you. But let's just say for example that we follow Gaara throughout the series of Naruto from when we first met him, or from the time when we first see him as a baby, either story-wise or chronicle-wise. We follow him, we learn there's a tailed beast inside of him, and that gives him more power, and then when we get to Shippuden, Gaara had the one-tailed beast, or Shikaku, removed from him. Now, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gaara actually may have became much more weaker when he had Shikaku removed from him, but as the series went on again, Gaara became more powerful as the series went on, even surpassing his own power when he had Shikaku inside of him. But the thing is, I don't know. This is just an example piece, and I'm not really sure how it works, but again, I'm just giving an example. Anyways, let's just say for example that at this point, as you can see on the chart right now, this is the point where Gaara is at his most powerful when he had Shikaku in him, in Shippuden. Now, Death Bowl had a battle with Toph versus Gaara, and in their fight, they didn't give Gaara Shikaku in his fight against Toph. And you know what? I'm all for that. If a character, story-wise or timeline-wise, can't access a power that they used to have, like Gaara and Shikaku, then that power should be off limits, because he can't access it anymore. And for all we know, after when Shikaku was removed from Gaara, he would be much more weaker without Shikaku, until years later he started to train and get better. But let's just say for example that we took out where Gaara is with Shikaku in Shippuden, where he's much more powerful, and moved it to a part of the series of where he would be more powerful in his story. Like maybe Jinchuriki Gaara is on par with Boruto series Kazekage Gaara. Or here's another example. Let's just say for example, just for example, we was in a story where Tony Stark had access to the Phoenix Buster armor, just for example, and I just want to let you guys know, I haven't seen or read the comic where Tony Stark uses the Phoenix Buster. Like I said, I'm just trying to give an example. Now, let's just say for example that somewhere down the line of this version of Tony Stark, which is the Avengers versus X-Men. Now, let's just say for example, as the story goes on, Tony decides to bring out the Phoenix Buster, where the arrow is pointing at the star on the screen. Let's just say for example that Tony brought out the Phoenix Buster, and it was at that point of the story of where he brought out the Phoenix Buster. And just to let you guys know, from what I've been hearing, the Phoenix Buster is one of the most powerful suits that Tony has ever had. I'm not really sure which one of his suits is the most powerfulest, but from what I've gathered, it's one of the most powerful suits that Tony has. It's not the strongest, it's one of the most powerfulest. Anyways, let's just say for example, at this point in time of the story, Tony brought out the Phoenix Buster, and then he used it against the Phoenix, and even though it put up a good fight, it was destroyed during the fight with the Phoenix. And no, this isn't what happened in the comic. Again, this is just an example, because I haven't read the Avengers vs X-Men. Like I said, I'm just giving an example. Anyways, let's just say for example that Tony did bring out the Phoenix Buster, and let's just say for example that Tony won, but the Phoenix Buster is completely broken and he can't use it anymore until he fixes it or makes another one, which would take ages to do, or it was completely destroyed and it had no effect on the Phoenix. Like I said, this is just an example, but let's just say for example that the Phoenix Buster is one of the most powerful suits in this timeline, and it did put up a good fight against the Phoenix. Hell, Tony won, but the suit is completely shattered and he can't access it anytime soon, or he can't fix it. It could be either at this point in time of the story, this was the only time that you actually see the Phoenix Buster, or maybe at the end of that comic, Tony might have actually fixed the Phoenix Buster. But let's just say for example that Tony didn't have access to the Phoenix Buster after his first fight with the Phoenix. He wouldn't be able to have any access to the Phoenix Buster, but this is Tony's most powerful suit. So when it comes to a verse battle, like for example, I don't know, Goku versus Iron Man. If it was Goku versus Iron Man, I think we should move Phoenix Buster Iron Man all the way to the end of that story. Instead of going through how the story would go, like, oh, Tony has some access to this, but at this point in the story that he can't access it, I think the Phoenix Buster, which is his most powerful suit in the story, I think should go right at the end of his story. So instead of going through characters in the verse battle through their stories like Iron Man and Gaara, I think the most powerful versions of their story should go at the end of their story, or somewhere near close to their more powerful versions of themselves in the story. And if you guys still don't know what I'm talking about, let me give you another example of what I'm trying to say. Let's have a look at Goku for a second. Now, this is one version of Goku, which is anime only Goku, from Dragon Ball Z, and then to Dragon Ball Super. This is one version of Goku. He goes from Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super. But since Goku doesn't have any transformations in Dragon Ball, we're going to go right to the very end of Dragon Ball and go right into Dragon Ball Z. Now, at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, Goku didn't have the Kaioken or Super Saiyan or whatever. He just had his base form. But as the series went on, Goku's base form got much more powerful within every single saga. One saga after the next, after the next, after the next. Goku's base became much more powerful. And as the series went on, from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Super, not only did Goku's base form get much more powerful, Goku got the Kaioken, Super Saiyan 1, Full Power, Super Saiyan 2, 3, God, Blue, Kaioken times 10, Blue. He got much more powerful in the Goku Black arc, and in the Tournament of Power, Goku could do the Kaioken times 20 in his blue form, and then he can go Omen, and then Ultra Instinct, and in the Mora arc, he can go Ultra Instinct, and he can go Giant, and in the Granola arc, he can use his Super Saiyan God with the Ultra Instinct. And this, at this point in the story, this is Goku at his absolute most powerfulest, story-wise, because we haven't reached the end of Z yet. But like I said, let's just say for example, that we was to put Goku up against someone like the Hulk, and it was only Goku in his base form, and Goku was fighting the Hulk from the beginning of Z all the way to the end of Dragon Ball Super. So we would start off with the beginning of Z Goku, and we made our way up to the latest chapters of Dragon Ball Super with Goku in his base form. Goku in his base form at this point is extremely powerful. But let's just say for example there was a version of Hulk that defeated the most powerful version of Goku in his base form. Where would you go next? Well, it would be obvious. The current Goku that has the most powerful base form would use the Kaioken times 2 all the way to 20. And listen, I know for a fact that Goku hasn't used the Kaioken in his base form for a very long time, but that doesn't mean that Goku can't do it. Goku is capable of doing the Kaioken times 2 all the way to 20, even after he got Super Saiyan 1 in the Frieza Saga. So Goku in the Granola arc can use the Kaioken times 2 all the way to 20. So after when Goku's gone from 2 to 20 with his Kaioken, Goku will go Super Saiyan 1, and I know Goku can go Ascended and Ultra Super Saiyan, but since he knows that these forms have weaknesses, we'll just leave them out and go right to Super Saiyan 2 and 3. And then when a version of Hulk defeats Super Saiyan 3 Goku in the Granola arc, Goku can go Super Saiyan God, which I'm not really sure what the multiplier for Super Saiyan God is, but it is pretty damn powerful. And then Goku uses Super Saiyan God Blue, which is supposedly a 50 times multiplier, and it's perfected blue, and then Goku can use Super Saiyan Blue with the Kaioken times 2 all the way to 20. And then when a version of Hulk has beaten Super Saiyan Blue with the Kaioken times 20, Goku goes into Ultra Instinct Omen, and then when a version of Hulk beats that version of Goku, Goku uses Full Mastery Autonomous Ultra Instinct, and then Goku uses his Giant Form against a version of Hulk that's defeated Mastered Ultra Instinct. And then the final version of Goku at this point in time in the story is when Goku has Ultra Instinct with his Super Saiyan God form, which is even more powerful than his Giant form. And this, in my opinion, when it comes to this version of Goku, which is the anime Goku from the beginning of Z all the way to the latest chapters of Dragon Ball Super the manga. And yes, I know that the anime doesn't follow the manga, and I know we have to wait until the anime comes back, but I'm just putting the manga in there just to show you guys an example of what I'm trying to say. But let's just say, for example, that the anime does follow the manga when it comes back. This would be a version of Goku that can be used in a verse battle, starting from his weakest base form at the beginning of the series, and we made our way to Goku's most powerful base form, which is in the Granola arc at this point. And once a character has defeated base form Goku in the Granola arc, then we start using the transformations. Again, the Kaioken, Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3, God, Blue, the Kaioken times 10, and then 20, and then Omen and Ultra Instinct, Goku's Giant form, and Goku using his God form with the Ultra Instinct. This is the order that Goku should fight in, and then once his most powerful base form has been defeated, then he can use his transformations and techniques. Again, this is only one version of Goku. There are loads of other versions of Goku that doesn't follow Dragon Ball Super. There's GT, Zeno, etc, etc. So if you ask me, I think in a verse battle, this is how it should be, starting from the weakest base form of Goku to the most powerful base form Goku, and then he can use his transformations. Or let me give you guys another example. Let's have a look at Ichigo Kurosaki for a second. Now, when it comes to Ichigo Kurosaki, his power is all over the place. He gains some power, and then he loses some power, he gains his power again, he gets even more powerful, he trains to control himself, and then he gets a huge power boost from almost dying. The thing is, when it comes to Ichigo, it's very hard to tell which of his forms is the weakest all the way to the most powerfulest, because Ichigo's forms fluctuate. Which is why I made this chart that you can see right here right now, because unlike Goku, which is easier to understand, because the more forms he has and the more powerful he gets, you do understand when it comes to his scaling in his series. But when it came to Ichigo, it was very confusing for me to understand which forms of Ichigo is the weakest to the most powerfulest. And this is why I made this chart. And at the beginning you have human base Ichigo, which is obvious, and then you have his Fullbring forms. This is when Ichigo was trying to get his powers back in the Fullbring arc, and then you've got Agent of the Shinigami arc, where Ichigo only uses his sword's base form, and then there's Soul Society Ichigo, where he has his Shikai, Bonkai, and then he has his mask, and then there's the Arrancar arc, where he has his Shikai, Bonkai, and his now controlled mask, and then there was the Arrancar Downfall, where Ichigo has his Bonkai and his controlled mask, and then we go back to the Fullbring arc, where Ichigo has his Fullbring powers and he has his Shinigami powers back. So it's a mixture of Fullbring and Shinigami. So it's Fullbring Shikai and Fullbring Bonkai. And then there's Full All White. And then there's L vs Ichigo. And then there's the fight with Aizen, where Ichigo has trained and he has his Bonkai. And there's his final Getsuga Tensho form. And then there's the Blood War arc, where Ichigo has his Fullbring Shikai Reforged Sword, which is supposed to be on par with his final Getsuga Tensho form, and then he has his Bonkai, and then Ichigo goes into his fused hollow form with his Shikai, and Ichigo's most powerful form is his fused hollow form with his Bonkai, as you can see right here at the bottom of the screen. Now, I've had some people say, oh, this is a good chart, and I've heard some people say, oh no, Ichigo's Fullbring powers aren't that weak. So if you guys want to correct me on this chart, please do so. But this is how I came up with all of Ichigo's forms from the weakest all the way to the most powerfulest. So let's just say, for example, Ichigo was facing off against Naruto. This is how I would have Ichigo face off against Naruto, going through all of his forms from the weakest all the way to the most powerfulest. Because like I said, when it came to Ichigo, his powers are very flexible. There was a time when he lost his powers and he regained them, but he gained something more. And then when he was about to die by the hands of Ulquiorra, he went full hollow. Which is why, if we was to go all versions of Ichigo versus all versions of Naruto, this is how I think the fight should go when it comes to Ichigo. Because if we was to put all these in order, like story-wise, it would be a right bloody mess. Like, oh, Ichigo lost his powers, but he regained them at this point of the story. Or, oh, Ichigo lost at this point, but he gained a huge power boost. Or, oh, Ichigo lost all of his powers after using the final Getsuga Tensho, but he regained them in the Fullbring arc with his Fullbring powers, but he lost them again, and then he gained his Shinigami powers again with his full bring powers. When it comes to Ichigo, it is a right nightmare to try and figure out which forms of Ichigo is the most weakest to the most powerfulest, which is why I did it like this. Again, if you guys want to correct me on this chart, please let me know in the comments below and tell me where you would put these versions of Ichigo if you was to put them to weakest to strongest. Now, when it's story-wise, from when Ichigo gets his powers to losing them again, and then gaining them, and then losing to somebody, but he gets a huge power boost, etc, etc. It's very confusing, and it's very, very flexible, which is why if Ichigo was to go up against Naruto, it would be Ichigo going from his weakest form all the way to his most powerful form in this order. Not story-wise, but like this, when it comes to the anime. And yeah, I forgot to mention, there are two versions of Ichigo. There's the anime and the manga, because there are things in the anime that Ichigo has done, but he hasn't done in the manga. So, there are two versions of Ichigo. And this is exactly what I mean when it comes to characters like Ichigo or Iron Man or Gaara. Like I said earlier on, some characters' powers can fluctuate when it comes to a story, especially Ichigo, which is why I think it's best, when it comes to verse battles, characters like Ichigo and Iron Man and Gaara should have their characters' forms weakest to strongest, like what you can see with Ichigo right now. Now, I did say we should put all the characters in order, sort them out where all the timelines are, and how many versions of a character there is, and sorting out which version and timeline is the most powerfulest. Now, with some characters, you can have characters fight from the beginning of their series to the end of their series. You know, someone like Goku, who is simpler to understand. But when it comes to someone like Gaara or Iron Man, or especially Ichigo, you're going to have characters like these guys that as their power fluctuate. Like, oh, Jinchuriki Gaara is very, very powerful, but then he lost Shikaku, and this version of Gaara is the most powerful version of Gaara so far, until you get this far into the anime of Naruto or Boruto. Or when it comes to Iron Man, he could have one of his most powerful suits, but they've been either destroyed, or they're not ready, or he lost the power and he can't use a certain suit anymore. In fact, it would be the most powerful suit that he's ever wore in that certain story. So it would be better to put that version of Iron Man at the end of his series, because he is the most powerful version of Iron Man in that point in time of the story. So it would make sense to put Phoenix Buster armor at the end of that story, because it is the most powerful version of Iron Man in that story. So in that story, Avengers vs X-Men, so Iron Man would work himself up all the way to the Phoenix Buster, instead of just losing it midway into the story. And instead of going through the pain in the backside story way when it comes to verse battles with Ichigo, I think it should be all forms of Ichigo, from weakest all the way to the most powerfulest. It will just make things so much easier that way, like I showed you on this chart right here right now. And it's not just these three. I'm sure there are loads of characters out there that has powers that fluctuate throughout their series or story or timeline, which is why I think it's better for these type of characters to fight in all their forms, from weakest to the absolute powerfulest. It would just be more simpler to understand which forms of a character is the weakest to the strongest, instead of going through it story-wise or timeline-wise. So let's just say, for example, if Gaara faced off against Toph, and let's just say, for example, that we let Gaara have Shikaku inside of him in his fight against Toph, because that would be one of the most powerful versions of Gaara, story-wise and timeline-wise. Yes, it was a good call for Death Battle to not let Gaara have the Shikaku inside of him, but when it comes to weakest to strongest versions of Gaara, I think Jinchuriki Gaara would put up a fight against Toph and maybe win, power scaling wise and form wise. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. And this is exactly what we need to do. Sort out all versions of a character, timeline and story wise, from the beginning of their series to the end of their series. Find out how many versions of that character is. Find out which one is the most powerful version of that character, and do it from weakest to strongest, timeline and story wise, when it comes to all their versions. And when it comes to the weakest of their forms to the most powerful form in their timeline, like what I showed you with Goku, from his weakest base form to his most powerful base form, and then you add all of his transformations like Kaioken, Super Saiyan 1, 2 and 3, God, Blue, Kaioken Blue times 2 all the way to 20, Omen, Ultra Instinct, Giant Form, and there's Ultra Instinct God. That's what I mean by putting them in order in that one timeline. It's the same with Ichigo. Get all of his forms from weakest all the way to the most powerfulest. It would be something like that. In my opinion, I think this way of sorting out which versions of a character is the weakest to the strongest would make things much more easier. But like I said, these are just example pieces, and I hope you guys know what I'm trying to say. But if you guys have any ideas on how we could make this more easier to understand how powerful a character is, or any other way of scaling, please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. So, what do you guys think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you guys like the ideas that I've put in this video? Do you think it's easy to understand? Do you think it's hard to understand? Please let me know in the comment section below and let's get a discussion going. I'm Freaky. Peace out. And please don't forget to check out my other social medias. Please go and check out my alternative video platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Twitch, and please come and hang out on my Discord server. We can play games, have a movie night or a series night, or you can watch me play a few games. And if you guys have any suggestions of any videos you want me to react to, or any video ideas in general, you can tell me on my Discord. I'm also on Twitter, Gab, Getter, and Paula. I'm on Locals, Tumblr, Minds, and if you guys want to support me, please go and check out my Subscribestar. It's like Patreon but better. All these things are in the description box below, so please go and check them out and subscribe to them. I'm Geek Freak. Peace out.